Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel for another roundtable review after many months away. I'm back today with a slightly different lineup to usual. We have one of our roundtable regulars, Pete Bock himself,
Well,
there, and someone new to the roundtables, to the video, to the channel, Charlie here, who people might have encountered before. He's had various connections to Doctor Who. Would you like to introduce yourself and briefly talk about some of those?
yeah, hi. I've just realised that I've got my actual name there in the box because it might know my name. My stage name is Charlie Ross, is Charlie Ross actually, and I've done a few Big Finish. I've been lucky enough to do that. I started off my whole my Doctor Who journey started when I was five, and way back in the days of John Pertwee, and it stayed with me ever since. But then I was a stand-up comedian for 25 years, and I very luckily got to do some work on conventions, and that led to me being asked by Gary Russell and Nick Briggs to do some Big Finish. I think Peter, you quite like Memory Lane, don't you? That's one
Yeah,
of the ones
sure.
you like. That was with Paul McGann. That was my first one, and I've done several since. So yeah, check me out. Some of them are quite good. I like the Legend of the Cybermen and City of Spires that I did. I played Rob Roy McGregor, who's a Scottish legend. So to get to do something like that was pretty cool. So yeah, so I've done a few, and also I really my just very briefly to tell you my most terrifying and most wonderful Big Finish moment was playing Commander Janartis in Gallifrey Series 4. And my first scene, because you're set up in sort of all these booths around you. So I'm in the first booth next to the director's booth. And in the booths around me were, in no particular order, well, this was the order, but Lalla Ward, John Leeson, Louise Jameson, and Linda Bellingham. And it was like, oh, thanks,
Ooh,
that's great. I'm
there we
just
go.
no pressure there at all. But yeah, so I'm very lucky to have done that. So thanks very much for having me on today. It's really cool, and I've
Yeah,
loved I love this. I love the round table, and they're really good fun. So yes, I'm looking forward to having some fun.
wonderful. So today, yeah, we're going to be talking about the War Games in Colour, the recent colorization, the second one that was over the Christmas period. Obviously, Patrick Troughton's final story, big 10-parter condensed down to like 90 minutes or whatever it was, and colorized new effects, music, score bits and pieces, played around with, and interesting developments as well, and kind of implications of certain things that were in there. Should we start off by, I suppose, covering our first experience of this story, or whatever it was, and different ways we've interpreted it or experienced it as well? Because I think some of us here, well, at least one of us has read the Target novelization or whatever. So, Charlie, maybe do you want to start us off with that as the oldest person here, perhaps?
Oh, well, thanks for that. Um, I think it's important to say that the war games generally could do with a trim anyway. I think it's
Hmm.
already a story that's way too long. I do love it. I love the concept of it. I love the idea of the different time zones and crossing over and moving among them. It gives it a real epic feel, and clearly that's what their intention was back in '69, was to send Troughton out on a big epic story, First World War, Romans, the whole bit. That I mean, that's fantastic, and you've got to really admire the ambition of it. And I think that's where it maybe lends itself to a return to it and a freshen up on it. But it definitely needed a trim. There's lots of, as happens a lot in six-part stories, a lot of running around, a lot of just trying to get from one place to another, and a lot of filler. So it really could do with a trim. Trying to go from 10 episodes to 90 minutes is a very ambitious trim, and one that was going to be, that was the one that raised everyone's eyebrow, Roger Moore eyebrow, and thought, how on earth are they going to do that? Will maybe, I'm sure it'll come out of discussion how successful they were or not, but I think the first thing that struck me straight away was just how good the colorization was. It was way better than the Daleks. They're clearly getting better at it all the time, which is why it's important for these things to be celebrated and to be successful. Because if people enjoy it and watch it, then they'll do them again, and they'll get better and better and better at it. They'll get better at the editing, they'll get better at the music, they'll tighten it up every single time, and it will constantly evolve and improve. So I don't think we should be too harsh on these. That it's a curio that it's just nice to see them doing something different with classic Doctor Who and trying to go down a road where maybe eventually we might get Invasion of the Dinosaurs with full scale CGI dinosaurs. How amazing would that be? So we've got to be kind of kind to these things, because I think they're learning as they're going, and I think the color, and I think it was interesting. I had a thought that the color was so good that I wonder and I'm not sure if this is even something that's a thing, but I wonder if directors at the time were gearing up for color television. They were starting to think about what they were doing with an eye to this new development that was coming in the next year, that we were going to all be working on color television. Black and white was getting ditched. They knew this at the time, and I wonder if that was a thought, because it did really work. The first 10, 15 minutes was just, you were just wowed by the color. It was incredible, especially the location shots I thought were just fantastic.
But the first time I remember watching it was my dad bought the DVD when that came out. I think that was about 2009, 2010, somewhere around there.
Mm.
I may have seen it before on video, but I don't remember having the video of that one. And yeah, but I remember loving the DVD when that came out, and it being this massive epic thing. I can remember one weekend sitting down and watching all 10 parts in one day, which seems ludicrous. It is
Wow.
ludicrous, but
Crikey.
it just
Yeah.
gripped me as a kid because I think even at that point I'd been a bit wary of black and white TV, and this is one of the first 60s stories I'd watched, and it proper gripped me. So yeah, I definitely would say that. Um, and then more recently, kind of read the Target book of it, and yeah, it's a great story. But I think Charlie's right. I think it does need a bit of trimming down. I think, as we'll come on to it properly in a review, I think maybe they trimmed a little bit too much off. But
Mm.
yeah, I'm sure we'll go into all that.
I probably came to it latest, I suppose, out of all three of us. It was, well, in 2013, I got the Regeneration box set they did on DVD with all the Doctor's Regeneration stories up to that point, like up to End of Time. And it was my birthday that year. I worked through them. I left the War Games till last because I suppose I was just daunted by it being this big 10-parter. And yeah, I suppose at least with like the 10th Planet, they had like the animated episode 4 on there. It's a short story anyway, and all the other ones. So I worked backwards from, like, I think I started with Time in the Rani with the TV movie and kind of slowly got there. It took me a good couple of
Whoa, whoa,
years, I
whoa,
think, before
whoa!
I kind of
Hang on,
properly.
hang on, hang
Yeah.
on. You started with Time and the Rani, and you
Oh
kept going
yeah.
after that. That is well done.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't mind Time in the Rani. Well, that's another video.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think it was like 2015 eventually when I got round to it, and so I've only seen it the once, apart from the colorized version. It's probably out of all of us the least familiar with it, and the kind of the intricacies of it as well, and the plotting and everything. But I do always remember like getting to the end, and there is that kind of sense of, oh my god, like we've got to the end of this now. It's a big monumental story and like this big achievement, and getting there with part 10 and just watching that play out, and like regardless of anything else, just like how spectacular that is and how kind of gripping and like captivating it is with the whole trial thing and this sense of foreboding and, oh my god, this is where it's going, this is where everything's been leading up to, and seeing the Doctor there like on the back foot, with the Time Lords, and back there the farewell with Jamie and Zoe as well, which is just so brilliant and kind of as good as anything they can do these days or have done since. And then obviously the regeneration, and that was expanded on as we'll get on to for the colorized one. But yeah, and so I think episode 10, part 10, is definitely kind of the strongest part for me and the kind of the most memorable, and the one that struck me the most. And even watching the new version as well, I was like kind of waiting to get to that moment in a way. I kind of, because I watched this, I suppose, in two halves. I didn't watch it all the way through. Didn't watch it live actually. And like I was interested to see beforehand, oh, like how much have they kept? Because like quite a lot of that final part is quite important. So how much of that have they kept? And I kind of just scrolled through and like skimmed through and saw there's like 15 minutes or so out of the 20 or 25. So I was like, okay, so they've kept a lot of that, and then we've got like another 70 odd minutes. So yeah, like your other 9 parts, however long that is, like 250 odd minutes or whatever. Like, okay, how is that going to work? And that was kind of what I went into it thinking, okay, like, yeah, like what is this going to be like? Yeah, like Pete, as you were kind of alluding to there is a sense, I think, with some of it, like it's difficult, like Charlie says, because we have to appreciate these things. And I guess as well for the colorization team, they don't want to have to colorize more than they have to, or they don't have the resources to colorize more than they have to. I think there was a sense with some of it that, yeah, this is very, very pacey. This is maybe like a bit too quick. It's a tricky one, but yeah, like there were definitely some bits where I thought, okay, does it have to be quite so pacey? I don't know. It felt a little bit strange at some points. What do we think of that? I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, it did. It's a problem, and obviously, as you say, they're constrained by budget. There's only so much they can do, and they are being incredibly ambitious. And there were going to be some dodgy cuts. There were going to be some moments where you were going from what a character doing one thing and then inexplicably being somewhere else, and not really explaining how they got out of that. Um, I think there's got to be a degree of acceptance for this kind of stuff. I think you've got to sort of just say that, yeah, that they're going to do it. I mean, the thing with the Daleks had a nice template already with the 60s film. It was all that was already this narrative was already nicely structured for them, and they could just follow that because the 60s
Yeah,
film is only an hour and 20 minutes. So they had a nice package there, a nice narrative they could follow. With this one, had way more demands and a lot of stuff going on, and there were big chunks, obviously, that were cut out. Um, so I think from that point of view, we've got to give them a couple of bit of slack with that. There were also some moments, and it's funny that I'm going to draw an incredible comparison here to something from TV from this year, where there were a few moments where characters were in a pickle, and then all of a sudden, next time you see them, they're not in a pickle, and it wasn't really explained how they got out of that. One of my favorite TV shows this year was Day of the Jackal with Eddie Redmayne. Maybe one of the biggest budget shows that they've done on Sky, and it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. But they did that twice in Day of the Jackal. There were two moments where he was in a pickle, and the next time we saw him, he wasn't in a pickle. And I think if we're going to criticize a show that's old, you know, as old as War Games is, and they're trying to compress 10 episodes in it, again, I'm coming back to this point. We can't be too critical on it. I think we knew going into it there were going to be brutal cuts in places. And as you say, Richard, they had to get to the end, and that's a big moment. And let's be
yeah,
honest, that's probably the bit we were looking forward to the most. And I'm
yeah.
sure we'll talk about that in more detail when we kind of get to it.
Mhm.
So, there's this kind of drive to the finish line. At times, it almost felt like running a long distance race, like a marathon. You've got that bit in the
Yes.
middle. You're not really caring about
Uh-huh.
the quality of your running style. You just want to get to the last 15 and get to that bit where, then it's going to ramp up again. So, yeah, I think there was a lot that was a bit brutal, but willing to forgive.
Yeah, I would agree. I think so I've been away for a few days in Melbourne, and obviously, a Doctor Who fan, we get
Of
talking about
course,
all this stuff.
yes.
And
Yes.
one of the things that someone said was that Benjamin Cook's very good at editing, and he's very used to editing trailers. So a lot of this War Games felt a bit like a long trailer, and in the way it had been cut,
Okay. Yeah,
Mm.
and
I can see
certain
that.
certain
Uh-huh.
bits that just felt a bit too. Like Charlie says, we've got to be, we've got to give compromises to this because it's obviously going to be difficult to get it put down to an hour and a half. But I think there's bits where certain continuity just felt a little bit off. So there was a character that was maybe in the German zone, and then a minute later and then they were captured there, and then a minute later they were off somewhere else doing something else, and it was like it just
Right.
felt a little bit odd.
Hmm.
But I think it depends how well you know the story, because if you know it quite well, I mean, I just read the Target book just before it was broadcast. Um, it's probably easy for you to get over that. But if this was your first time coming to it, as it was for somebody that I spoke to, incredibly, then yeah, maybe you'd have a bit more of an issue with certain aspects of it.
The Target
Yeah.
book's interesting because it's years since I've read it, and I must pay it a revisit. But the Target book's interesting because the Target book cuts an awful lot out. That it compresses. It's not a big book. It's not the epic novel that you'd expect it to be, given that it's based on a 10-part story. Having read it recently, Peter, do you think that they followed that narrative, or how did the Target novelization compare to this abridged version on TV?
But I didn't feel like, because I think the last time I watched the War Games was probably like 2 years ago, so not too long ago, but a while ago. I couldn't think of anything that had been missed out in the Target book. I'm sure there was stuff they had cut out from it, but there was nothing that stuck out for me as being blatantly missed out of the book. So it's difficult to say really with
Okay,
which
interesting.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I think it was just a
Yeah.
cut down version. I think certain scenes were just shorter than the TV version.
I think for me, because like I say, I'm not probably as familiar as some people with the bulk of the story, so I didn't notice so much like continuity stuff, or like, oh, this character is here and he should be here, or whatever it might be. Um, it was more a case of just like maybe like even with that opening scene where they come out of the TARDIS and just like the speed of things, the things move along. It felt unusually kind of pacey, like even by like today's TV standards or whatever. Um, so I don't know, maybe like going forward, whether if like even just like adding a couple of like seconds to shots, like not shaving them quite so much, just to give it a little bit more space and like maybe like cutting other like bigger part, like cutting actual like big parts of it, like scenes or whatever, just to allow other scenes to breathe a bit more. Perhaps that might be a way forward,
Mhm.
but it's a tricky one when you're dealing with something that's like
So,
however many years old,
so
decades old. It's
Yeah, you're right, Richard. There was it did feel that there was no room to breathe at any point. It was just
yeah,
never allowed any kind of room or capacity for any kind of real development of story or character. It was just let's get on with it, just cut it,
mm,
cut, and just keep going. But I think again, I can't think of any other way they could have done that. But you're right.
mm.
Occasionally, just a couple of seconds, hold it for a second, just take a moment. Might have been a
Yeah,
nice
I think
idea.
so. Yeah,
I suppose every second that they hold it for is then another second or few seconds that they've got to colorize and also
mm.
get the broadcast time allowed for. So I
Yeah.
suppose, yeah, I suppose in a way, it's apparently they were right on the mark with 90 minutes, like exactly 90 minutes, and that was obviously as
Oh
much as they
right,
could do.
okay, yeah.
You're right.
Oh,
I think if
okay.
we had one of the I think if we had one of the colorizing team here, they would be saying to me, "Do you realize the effort it takes to
Yeah.
Yeah,
keep 10 seconds on screen?"
yeah.
So yeah,
Oh yeah.
fair
Mm,
play. Yeah.
mhm.
How do you think it compared to the Daleks last year then overall? Because I think it was much better than the Daleks. I felt like the Daleks was much more fast paced without room to breathe.
Okay.
This one had a little bit more room to breathe. It's
Uh,
still very, very fast. But I think it
Well, I
worked
think
better
it
overall.
was nice not to have. I think they went too far with the bright colors on the Daleks. I think they thought, yeah, let's put color everywhere and
Yeah.
Barbara's shirt. What was it? Was
and
Barbara's shirt
the
pink? Right?
montages and the little music
Yeah,
bits as well, and yeah.
yeah, and
And
it
the wink
felt
at the camera.
yeah. Yeah, but
And
I
there's
think we remember
yeah.
we're talking about an episode, a story that is 6 years older than the War Games. We
Mm.
might not notice it, but technology had moved on considerably in that 6 years. So I think the War Games is shot better. And I don't know, I'm no expert, but I imagine the Daleks probably was a bit more of an effort to colorize. Um, I mean, the Daleks look beautiful. It was great. But thankfully there was no talky over bits with the links that they did in the Daleks. I'm glad they didn't do much of that in the War Games, or if any, did they do any of that? I don't think so.
It had some new bits of audio in the war games, I think.
Was there right? Right.
Oh,
Some
okay,
for
yeah.
Rising. Yeah, there was some new audio.
I think there were bits where
Um,
like maybe they were intercutting like like they're in the war room, whatever it is, like they're talking about stuff happening and they're showing the Doctor or other characters like moving through or whatever the different zones. I think maybe there was some of that. I think overall, yeah, this probably was. It felt a bit more like faithful, and again, that's kind of like a weird concept with these because it is a thing in its own right and it is having to do something different. But I think for the most part, with the exception of one part of it, which I suppose we'll talk about quite soon. Um, but yeah, and that was the general consensus that I've seemed to see as well. Like, oh, okay, like it is, they are learning, like the team with this, and they are getting better and improving, and I suppose finding out what works and what doesn't. Yeah, should we maybe get into? I mean,
should we stop ignoring the elephant in the room and just
yeah,
get on to the master?
the war chief in the room.
I'm
Yeah,
dying to talk about this bit.
yeah. Well, that's what I was
Why don't we
alluding to.
start
That's
then,
what I was
Charlie?
alluding to.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, with I was watching it with a very close friend of mine who's also a Doctor Who fan, and
Uh,
that moment where the little master refrain came in, we immediately went, okay, that's interesting, and then also immediately went, the internet's about to melt down. You know,
yeah.
everything's just going to go. Um, you know what? I think it's fine. I think they didn't make it so on the nose that you could walk away saying, I like to think that's the master, or you could walk away saying it's not the master. And that's absolutely fine. And I think sometimes fandom gets a little bit too OTT about that kind of stuff. It's a little nod, a little gesture. Okay, they did lay it on every single time the Doctor
Yeah.
and the War came together. They had that, and they even had Delgado's master theme at some point just to really hammer it home. Um,
Uh,
but I think you can walk away and choose to think what you want to think. And I remember thinking years and years ago when I watched the War Games for the first time, I remember thinking, oh, I wonder if that could be the master. That would be interesting if that were the case. So obviously that's why they did it, because that thought was already embedded in fans for years. They've already
hmm.
had this "I wonder if" kind of idea. Um, but it also comes down to, and if you'll indulge me for a second, that it's something that does kind of annoy me a little bit in overall fandom, not just in Doctor Who, that someone said, "Oh, it's been established in the New Adventures books in the 90s that that's not the Master." Well, my contention with that is that I go with whatever the original source is of any aspect of genre. So, for example, and an example of this that really annoyed me with the Solo Star Wars movie, and sorry, spoilers to anyone who's not seen Solo, but I'm going to give a spoiler here.
It's been
Darth
out nearly 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. It's time. Darth
Yeah.
Maul popped up at the end of it, and I was like, "Oh, that's really confusing." Last time I saw Darth Maul, he was split in two, falling down a big sort of pit, and then someone said, "Oh, it's explained in one of the comic books." No, sorry, Star Wars is a movie franchise. Everything that is part of the mythology, for me, should be bedded in the movies. I shouldn't have to go to a separate source to understand something that happens in the movies. I think the same applies to Harry Potter. It's a book series, and the movies or the TV show that's upcoming shouldn't change any of the mythology that's not in the books. And Doctor Who is a TV series. So I think to say, oh, it's explained in a book that you should have read. No, I shouldn't have read. I've decided not to go down that route, and I've decided that I'm going to follow the TV show. And ultimately, it doesn't matter because I can think it, Peter can think something else, Richard, you can think something else, and we can still all enjoy it in exactly the same way. So, in my head, I quite like the idea that it might be the Master, but it's never going to be confirmed or denied either way because that's there and that's it. The actor's not around anymore. They can't do anything with that, so it's a bit of fun, and I think that's the only way we can look at it. Sorry, rant over.
I
I
think
mean, what are
also
your
as well,
thoughts
though,
on that?
like,
Do you think that you should take other sources as canon? I mean, I know. My God, I'm talking. I'm only being Big Finish, so therefore, am I canon the characters I played because I've been in? And I would say you can choose to say yes or no. So I think what are your thoughts on that theory?
the problem is if we make Big Finish canon, that means we have to make you canon, and I'm not sure we want to do that.
Exactly, I would
So,
not recommend that at all.
no, I think you're right. I think the TV series um should be like the main thing for the canon. But then the other bits you can enjoy it, but it's like a starter or a dessert. You can kind of take it or leave it, but that's the main
Yeah,
meal.
that's a really
Um,
good way of putting it, actually. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but we did a lot about this at uni actually when I did my TV degree a few years back, and about how different uh, media can play into a franchise, and it's really interesting. And
Mm,
the thing is as well, like people who don't want the war chief and the master to be the same person, they can just say, "Oh, it's just a bit of music," and they'd be right because there has been times in the show where I'm sure there was a Capaldi episode where Rose's theme played or something, and it doesn't mean that Capaldi's Doctor is Rose. It's just a bit of music. So if you want to go down, if you want to believe that, you can believe that, and if you want to believe that it is the same character, you can, and it doesn't
yeah,
make any difference. I
yeah.
think I think it was nice in a way that they didn't go the full hog and put Delgado's face on, which they could have very easily done.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I would have quite liked that, but I think what they went with was the best decision because it's not confirming it and it's not denying it. It's kind of making everyone's hopefully happy. Well, we're Doctor Who fans, we're never happy, but everyone should be happy.
I did mean to
Um,
go back and listen, and maybe you guys, did you pick this up as well? When the war chief gets killed, I'm sure I heard a tiny little
yeah, regeneration.
Hollow
regeneration
generation sound effects.
special effect.
I think I've heard
Yeah,
that. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
that.
okay.
yeah.
I wondered
Yeah.
if I would just, because I'm a bit deaf, so I
Mhm.
wondered if I would genuinely heard that or not, or whether it was in my imagination.
But there was a bit where the War Master, the War Chief was on the
Ah,
floor.
see?
The War Chief,
There's already a
the
War
War
Master
Chief was on
Jack
the
Jacobi.
floor.
He's there already. Yeah.
Yeah, the War Chief was on the floor, and they could have very easily put Delgado's face on it and put some
Yeah,
regeneration energy on it. But I'm really
Yeah.
glad they
Yeah.
didn't. I think this way everyone can be happy. Whether everyone is happy or not is a different question. But no, it was nice. I liked it. I thought it was good. I think personally the War Chief is the master. But other opinions are available. You know.
we've always got to have those little caveats, haven't we? Just so
Yeah. Before the
Yeah.
That's
comments
No.
all start, then
yeah, that's the
I
beauty
had.
of what we do. The Doctor Who is such a huge mythology over the years that I think you've got to be allowed a little latitude to go with lean one way or lean another and decide who or what, who's what, and what's going on. I think you're allowed that.
yeah. Should we get on to the final kind of 20, 30 minutes of the War Games and what happened with that?
Yeah.
Because there's a few bits there to talk about, I think.
Well, I think there's
Go
one
for it.
important point to make
Mm.
that there's a couple of actors who are of Doctor Who sort of famous alumni. Obviously, you've got David Saville playing Carstairs, who popped up with Troughton in the Five Doctors, which was quite a nice touch. And I
Yeah.
don't know if that was intentional, but he is the kind of brigadier in the start of the Five Doctors. Um, and of course, Philip Maddock, who is one of the finest Doctor Who alumni of all time. I mean, he's appeared. Has he guessed more than anyone else? I think he must. I think it must be Philip Maddock.
I think Michael Sheen must have done more.
Possibly Michael
Okay.
might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, the two of them. I'll need to
Yeah,
do a bit of a check on
Yeah.
that. Um,
yeah,
but it's great. It's always great to see Philip Maddock, and I think you've got to add in Philip Maddock appeared in the Dalek movie as well, in Daleks Invasion
Mm.
Earth. So he's it's always great to see him, and he's always good value for money. So it was with those amazing glasses, was very freakish and yeah, great. So and funnily enough, also there's a little aside. Bernard Horsfall in that year appeared in Doctor Who and a Bond movie. He was in on Her
Ah.
Majesty's Secret Service that year, so he managed to tick both of my
and
favourite
he was in the Mind Robber the same
boxes.
year, wasn't he? So he had a busy year.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yes. Of
so
course.
yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
I was just really interested, well, that all three of those actors that play the Time Lords
Hmm.
come back at some point and play other Time Lords.
Hmm. Yeah,
All
yeah,
three of
interesting.
them. Yeah.
They
So
did. They were,
what do you think about the whole having Gallifrey and the CGI Citadel thing and all the other bits that came with it?
I didn't mind that stuff. I saw some people saying, "Oh, like, I don't know, like, don't bring in like new series elements or visuals and stuff." And with I suppose we'll get onto as well, but like stuff like the shots of the new Doctors, like the new series Doctors, when he's like, oh, like too old or young or thin or fat, whatever it is, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, to go back
Not too
very
fat. They cut that
briefly,
bit out.
uh, yeah, yes, of
well,
course they didn't. Yes,
my thought on that, if you don't mind me interrupting, Richard,
go on. Yeah,
is that I think it was fine to do, but it was a mistake to have them in their costume. They should
That's what
just
I
have
was going to
and
say.
with the
That's the
accessories as
bog
exact
well,
thing.
standard
it's a
shot.
little bit.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So there was a
It's
mistake to have
just-
them holding sonic screwdrivers and stuff.
Yeah,
That was that was a mistake.
I didn't
I
mind it
think
too much. I think like there were other creative things I could have done with it, maybe like rather than just have it. And again, I suppose it's easy because it's stock images and stuff. But rather than just having like Jodie Whittaker and Matt Smith and David Tennant, I saw some people say like, oh, you could have had like some of the other actors considered for like the third Doctor or the second or the first or things like that, or similar things to that, like the Morbius Doctors, similar ideas where you have other people as a nod to fans or whatever, like who are involved behind the scenes or just other actors connected with Doctor Who. Like with the Rishti Grant thing in Rogue last year, things like that maybe would have been fun. But Pete, sorry.
I think the problem is, I think, like you were saying, because they're all in costume and stuff, I think it would have been really nice if they'd had like maybe sketches of the new series Doctors or promo pictures without the costume on, or just something, or just a picture of their faces. I think when you start getting pictures of like Jodie holding a fob watch with all the division's memories in it, the Time Lords wouldn't show that, would they?
Hmm.
And other
Yeah,
other costumes and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it was an improvement on the atrocious sketch drawings that we had in the original, which were
Yeah, you couldn't
always
really have stuck with those, could you?
yeah. I'm glad I
Yeah.
expected that. As for I mean, the Gallifrey image and the dome and stuff. One thing that they've been very good at with the re-releases is the added effects in some of them, and I could cite Dalek Invasion of Earth is I think that's great, and that you run the real risk of being anachronistic, that the effects look like they don't fit with the show of the time, and I think
Mm.
that the producers of these DVDs have been very good at that so far. They've been very good at using updated effects, but still making them look like they fit in with the time. I think possibly on this occasion that it pushed it to the boundary. It almost looked a little bit too polished and a little bit too 21st century for that. But then again, we are putting it into color, so I suppose the argument's there that we're trying to make it look snazzier and more updated. I get a little fanboy bit of glee every time I see something like that. I think it's great. I think we're seeing things that when I watched Doctor Who in the 70s, that you were always only ever supposed to imagine were there. You knew the Daleks could fly, but you just had to imagine it. You weren't allowed to see them because you knew they couldn't do it. And I think that since the show came back in 2005 and they can do all of that stuff and it's all available, I think it's okay for the classic series to get a bit of TLC occasionally, and as long as it doesn't impose on the narrative or the quality of what you're doing, I think it works quite well. I'm okay with it.
I think on the theme of new series things, just to briefly go back to like the whole master debate, I think that the most kind of egregious new series thing in it for me was when they used the John Sim master music. Um,
Mm.
I thought, okay, like have the Delgado music in there. That's a nice little nod. I suppose neither of them, like we say, actually like confirm or deny that it's the master or not, and I don't really have any strong feelings either way. But I think like including Murray Gold music in there is a little bit just like, oh, okay, like this doesn't quite work. It's quite
Just to
jarring,
play
and it doesn't fit for me.
just to play devil's advocate, maybe that's because you recognise the new series music more than the classic. Maybe you're more familiar with that on your ears
Hmm.
to stick out.
Yeah. I also,
Maybe not. I don't know.
I wonder the big, I think the big question potentially is asking ourselves, who is this for? Are they trying to bring in new fans by doing this? Are they trying to open up the classic era to an audience who perhaps might be resisting because it's in black and white, because the effects aren't great, or is it just for us to really enjoy as a little gift to Doctor Who fans for being so faithful and loyal over the years that every now and then we're going to give you this little Christmas nugget or whatever. So I suppose in the end, it depends what kind of audience are they expecting? Are they expecting, is it just going to be, we're expecting it to be a couple of 100,000 fans will watch this and that's fine. We're okay
Hmm.
with that. Or are we trying to do something with this? I think that's a big question because it obviously feeds into whether they're going to continue doing it.
So I've got two brothers. The first brother, both younger than me. First brother, I got to watch every single episode of Doctor Who over like two
Hmm.
years. So he's seen the whole lot, and he loves classic Who, and he's really into it now. The other
Yeah.
brother has only really dipped into classic Who a little bit. So we watched a few of the Tales of the TARDIS things that they released about a year ago, a year and a half ago, and he was convinced that because we watched the Time Meddler, and he was convinced that the monk was the master. So it's really interesting that as a new series fan, he was thinking that,
Mhm.
and I hadn't said anything to make him think that. Um, but he sat down to watch the War Games. He kind of said, "Oh, I'm not going to watch it, but I'll be in the room while it's on." Um, and I kind of noticed he was on his laptop, and I kind of noticed him getting more and more drawn into it. He was watching more and more of it as it went along, and he was asking questions and saying, "Oh, why? Is it what's this trial thing happening here, and what's this and what's that?" And
Hmm.
so he was definitely taking an interest in it. But yeah, I don't know if necessarily it's enough to draw new people in. I don't know.
They kind of like make out that it's, I don't know, like for like or making it more accessible, getting people into it. Maybe it is doing that. I don't know. Like maybe we're just not seeing so much evidence or whatever. Maybe like in years to come, people will say, "Oh, like I discovered the Daleks and the War Games through these colorizations." Like people who are kids now or whatever. Um, I
Mm.
can't help but feel that actually, yeah, maybe it is just kind of it is for us really, or like they it's all very knowing. Like they put all this stuff in, like all the nods to the master, or like here's a bit of the Johnson master theme. Here are these shots of Gallifrey, and like for people to kind of pick up on, and like I suppose to be sort of intentionally a bit controversial as well, or contentious, and like oh, like we'll put that in there because we know that's going to like cause a bit of debate or like get some
Yeah.
engagement online or whatever. And like, oh, we'll put that shot in there because all of those promo pics, because then the fans will be able to like say, oh, that's the episode that's from, and that's the series that picture of David Tennant is from, and all the rest of it. Um,
I've heard people
yeah,
say online that the reason that picture of David Tennant comes up and the second Doctor hates it is because of David Tennant's hair not being sticky up.
yeah, yeah. I'll take that. Fair enough. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, so I don't know. I think I'd more towards it being okay. Like, yeah, this is for fans, really.
Mm.
Like, whatever, however they dress it up.
Yeah. Because the thing is that
But
we've talked a lot about the master thing, but there would
mm,
have been an awful lot of people who watched it, I imagine, who maybe just watched Doctor Who, like they watched one episode once. I don't know how these people can sleep at night, but people are out there do that. You know,
yeah,
there
yeah,
are
yeah.
people who just watch television one time and never
Uh-huh.
go back to it. And there could well be people watched it for whom that master reference just went straight over their head, and they would not have had a
Oh, yeah,
clue
yeah,
that that
sure.
was happening.
Mhm.
So, I think that was kind of clever the way they did that, that it was just a case of if you want it, you can take it. If you don't, you can back off from it.
Mhm.
Obviously, we're building towards the moment, and I know that most of us fans had seen this because it's a rather brilliant piece of work done by a fan out there, and it's a shame. We should really know who that
Yes.
fan is.
I believe the Confession Dial. I
Is
think
it right? Okay.
Jacob,
Um,
maybe. Yeah, yeah.
Congratulations, an amazing piece
Mhm.
of work. And it was so nice because it is something that has griped with me my entire Doctor Who fandom life is that we didn't get it. As I love regenerations, and I will always,
Yeah.
as a kid, was always excited to see how they did it.
Mhm.
And it always really irked at me that I didn't get to see that regeneration. So I just absolutely loved it, and I'm blown away by how they did it.
Yeah, I think
You guys,
it's one of those things, isn't it? As a Doctor Who fan, like these milestones are so important to fans. I remember when the Day of the Doctor came out. For a lot of fans, and I'll probably put myself included in this, the biggest event of that anniversary was seeing McGann regenerate into John Hurt, and then kind of seeing John Hurt regenerate into Eccleston almost.
Mhm.
And I think it's tying up these loose ends that are wonderful things for fans.
mm,
Um, I thought the regeneration was good. I think it Pertwee looked a little bit plasticky. He didn't look quite himself. I don't know if they'd gone a bit too much on um, the restoration of it, or there's something about it that just didn't quite click with me, with how especially John looked. Um,
I'll wait to see how
and
you look 25 years after you died.
true, true,
I think you look quite good
true,
for a man that's been dead for well over 2 decades.
true. Um, yeah, but then I don't know. It was good. It was good. I think they missed a trick not putting the last shot of Spearhead on because that wasn't there, was it? I don't
Him
think.
coming out the TARDIS, yes, they put that
They
in.
had the
Was
yeah,
that
they were coming out
wasn't
the
there?
TARDIS. Yeah, I
Because
think
That
that was
wasn't
at
it.
because
the
one thing
end,
they
wasn't
did
it?
fix that again is something that's always annoyed me about Spearhead is the blip materialization of the TARDIS,
Hmm.
which is always like I remember thinking if people worked on this not watch this show, they don't know what happens.
Yeah.
And then someone did suggest to me, yeah, it happened like that because the Time Lords put it there rather than it
Mm.
materialized.
Oh,
So,
okay.
okay,
Yeah.
but I'd rather just see the TARDIS materializing. It's the first
Uh,
time it appeared in color. They should have done it right.
mhm.
And
So it was nice they corrected that.
seeing the nest on the nesting spheres coming down as well
Yeah.
was a nice moment.
Mm,
Yeah,
And the little nods
yes.
like on the TARDIS dial, like switching between 1970 and
Yeah.
1980. Again, there's little things for us as fans to kind of pick up on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I think it worked for me. I mean, I suppose like both of us, a lot of people, like as we've said, I'd already seen the version on YouTube, and that the story goes that was kind of picked up by the production team and edited slightly to fit in with this. Um,
I think the YouTube one's slightly better.
mm.
I
I've not
think they
gone
took stuff
back to it
out.
recently. It'd be interesting to look. Yeah,
Yeah.
because obviously that's not got
Yeah,
the. Or does that have the shots of John Pertwee in? I forget. Like the because that's from
the demon stuff.
Inferno. Was does it have different ones? Or
Mm.
I can't remember.
I think he just has more. I think it's just slightly extended. Which,
More of
in
him.
fairness, again, yeah, in fairness, they might not have had time for on the
Mm.
broadcast. So
Mm.
I do
there
know
was a
what
rumor going around saying that
I
there's
do.
an extra 10 minutes on the Blu-ray of it. Is that true?
I don't know.
So when
Oh, like
the
an
Blu-ray
extended edit
they're
releasing
releasing
the whole thing,
Colourisation, they
like a
do an extra
director's
put
cut
an
or
extra
whatever.
10 minutes in it.
Oh, I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe. I
Okay.
think that they have said there's gonna be some stuff on there like that we don't know about yet or that's not been shown yet. But I don't know what it's gonna be.
Right.
I assume there'll be like special features, but maybe it's more stuff. That'd be good. Yeah,
Footage, yeah.
I do get you mean know about Pertwee. It reminded me very much of the John Pertwee in the trailer, the brilliant trailer for Day of the Doctor. But I always thought it never quite looked like Pertwee in that one.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
trailer
right.
where it goes through all the doctors and they all get and
The save the day
again,
thing. Yeah.
again, Colin is treated criminally with his back to everyone. I mean, for God's sake, how much more can the BBC beat that man up? It's like
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
can you be kind to him, please, just once? Um, and but yeah, I always thought that the Pertwee in that didn't quite look. He looked a bit fake, didn't quite work for
Okay.
me,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
and it reminded me a bit of that. But it was so lovely to see a
Maybe
story that it did it. It had the regeneration in it.
Hmm.
maybe it's just 'cause the Autons have got to him a little bit early and he's become so plastic and so yeah.
Yeah.
It's a duplicate or something. Yeah.
So what's
uh,
I've got to go in a few minutes, but before I go, what's the story that people want to see next year if they do another one? Not to take over
say
from you,
this.
Richard,
Yeah.
but I'm curious.
No, not at
Yeah.
all. I think for me, the Daleks' invasion of Earth would be an obvious choice.
Yeah, we go.
And
That was my choice.
yeah, and with
Here's
I just think
one
because
thing
obviously that
Doctor.
was One for each Doctor. Oh, okay.
One for first and one for second.
Oh, well, I think for Troughton it would have to be like a Cyberman one, so maybe something like Tomb, I guess.
Yeah.
I think with Dark Invasion of Earth, it would be very obvious, not least because that was shown like up in like in the weeks up to the festive period, wasn't it? And then like Susan leaves like the final part on Boxing Day, I believe. So that would it just feels very fitting with
Yeah.
the allusions to Susan in the most recent series as well. Whether that's going anywhere or not, we don't know. But yeah, that would just make sense for me. Obviously, it's another Dalek blockbuster. But yeah, no, any other
Yeah, I
thoughts?
agree.
Questions? What
I
do you
was going to
think?
say Dalek Invasion of Earth just because it's got so many
Mm,
iconic moments. It was the first show that was shot on location. Um, and they have the Daleks on the Westminster Bridge and all that stuff,
yeah.
which just looked fantastic in color. And I suppose other people might argue, well, you've got a version of that in color, but it's not. It's the alternative universe version of it with the Peter Cushing
Yes.
movie,
Yeah.
which means so much more to my generation than it does to you guys because in the 70s it was the only reference to 60s Doctor Who that we could watch or see.
Mm,
Um, and it was Daleks in color, and I saw those films in the cinema on a reissue, and that was the first time I'd seen the Daleks in color because I had to wait for Day of the Daleks. That was a few years later. And I was very young. I just want to emphasize that. Um, but yeah, so these movies mean a lot. But at the same time, I think just to see that because it was such an ambitious story, like the War Games, I think it was a good one to do. As for a Troughton. I don't know, maybe something like the Time Meddler or the Mind Robber. The Mind Robber so mind-boggling that it might be quite interesting in color. I really like the Time Meddler. I think it's one of my favorite Troughton stories. Um, and funnily enough, I've never thought that the Meddler was the Master. He's a kind of totally different character. He kind of is just he's just yeah, he's just not that sense of psychopath that the Master is. But yeah, they're the ones that might work for me. But I'll be happy with whatever they give us.
I think that the Mind Robber is a really interesting one because the first part is just kind of black and white anyway, isn't it? Really, or they're in a white void,
Mm,
so you
mm,
won't
yeah,
have to do too
yeah.
much to that. I think
yeah, and they
for
could do a
me,
Wizard of Oz thing by merging it into color.
Moving into
Like a
colour. Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and making the white space much bigger by putting
Mm,
more space around it or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
I think for me, Hartnell would be Unearthly Child. I know it's all tied up in
In an
in
ideal
rights,
world, yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think that'd be really cool to see the origins of Doctor in color.
Yeah.
Um, and then I
Just,
think
let's
maybe
be honest, just episode one though, because it would be a complete and utter waste of
yeah
everyone's time and money to do two, three, and four, because they are just nonsense. And in my head, at the end of Unearthly Child, I actually told kids I did a screening of Unearthly Child on the 23rd of November in 2023 in school, and I said to the kids, don't bother with the next two, three, and four. Just jump straight to the Daleks, and it works just fine. They land
yeah.
on a barren planet with a shadowy figure. It works just fine.
Beyond that, because that's all tied up in rights issues, my favorite, the one that I'd choose for Hartnell in color, would be the Aztecs. I think to see that all those oranges and vibrant colors and not pyramids, temples. That's what I'm trying to say. Temples in color that would look really nice. And then I think for Troughton, I think you said before, Richard, Tomb of the Cybermen would look really good because you got all those
Mm.
light blues and icy colors, and it'd feel very Christmassy
Yeah.
somehow. I think maybe put a bit of tinsel around the
Yeah, that's a
Cybermen
point.
themes
Yeah.
if you want to spruce it up a bit,
Yeah,
a bit
yeah.
of
I mean,
tinsel.
Yeah.
the tragedy of the whole 60s thing is that the perfect story in color would be Marco Polo, but don't have
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
So,
I suppose the
yeah,
final thing to say on that as well is whatever they do next, because we've already had like two of the longest 60s stories, it's almost like bound to be a six-parter or four-parter. So hopefully, in terms of the pacing and stuff, maybe that's going to be
yeah.
less
But
obvious with the cuts and things, and
yeah.
they'll probably
maybe
cut it down to 30-minute
what a shorter,
screening then. Yeah,
a
they'll cut it.
shorter broadcast slot. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll still be
Wow.
crammed
Oh
in.
gosh.
Just
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Don't
but
tempt fate.
maybe they'll find some more HD footage like they found for this one, and they'll do something with that. I don't know.
That'd be
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, I've got to hop off. I don't know about the rest of you, but I've got to
Yeah,
go.
I've got to hop off as well. It's been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for
Lovely.
having me
Been
on. And
called back off to Gallifrey, are we? Yeah.
yeah, I've had the call.
We're
And
being
also
casted. Yeah. Goodbye. Yeah.
a big congratulations to Tom Baker, MBE. That's why he's there.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
And he's managed to
amazing
stay
to
stood
have a
up the whole
doctor.
time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we've made our little boxes out of beer mats, that we're going to send a message after the time was in. So yeah, Happy New Year, everyone.
Back off to our home
It's been
planets.
lovely catching up.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Happy
Yeah.
New
To you
Year.
too, and to everyone all at home as well. And stay tuned for more of these in the future. But otherwise, thanks,
And thanks
both Charlie and
thanks
Pete for
Charlie
joining me.
for joining. Yeah, thanks
Thanks
Charlie
for
for
joining.
jumping
Yeah,
in.
pleasure. Thank you so much. Go and
I
buy
think
my
we'll,
big finishes. No, stream my big finishes.
Link in
we'll
description.
have him back, Richard, or not?
I should have a little link. And let me know. I'm on TikTok
We'll have
and
to see how
Instagram.
how
So let me
it
know what you
goes
think.
down. I think we'll have to see what the audience think. Well, should we do a vote and see? Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to
Whether
keep
they want to keep
Charlie,
him or not. Yeah.
if you want to keep Charlie, write down below.
Yeah.
If you don't want to keep him, also write down below.
Well, they
Yeah,
might
yeah.
ask
There
to
we go.
replace me with one of you guys. You never know, so you should be careful what you ask for.
It's a dangerous game, this, isn't it? I got told by somebody. I'm not joking. I got told by somebody in person that I was their favourite person on the round table. So if you compete with me for that, I'm not going to be a happy man. I tell you now.
Well, no one wants to see a crumbling old relic, so I think you have to go.
Whoa! On that note,
On that note.
I love you,
Bye,
Peter.
everybody.
I love you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
bye.